Hello, America.
Welcome to the Truth Seekers Podcast, Episode 3. Nicholas Carter with the Regs. We
Dalton Cantrell.
got Dalton. We got Josh Allen.
And Josh Allen. Oh, you already said that. What's up, guys? How y'all doing?
And today we have our first guest
This is our
appearance.
inaugural guest.
Inaugural
He's
guest.
extremely important to the history of this podcast now.
He goes by the name of Kenneth Moody. Ken, you want to say hello?
Hey everybody.
Hey. All right, let's go.
Problematic. Oh, we're good. We're good. No, that's fine. That's fine.
All right, gentlemen.
Got our espresso. What is this?
That is a cold brew.
It's a cold brew? Nitro.
Nitro cold brew.
Nitro
Nitro.
brew with what did you?
There's
What
a
did you put in it?
little captain.
Yeah.
Aye, aye.
This is honestly like one of the best coffees I've ever had. A little captain.
Pump
in
of
there.
Irish cream. It's one of those Caribbean Irish creams.
Oh,
Yeah.
ooh, that's sexy.
It's a hybrid.
That's sexy. I like that.
One of my ancestors is an Irish cream.
Oh my god.
So actually, something that makes today's episode extremely important is actually the fact that we're starting a series. So we've been talking about doing series in the last few episodes, but this is going to be the first series that we do, and it's going to be an election rundown for the state of Tennessee. So we have some opening comments and stuff that we're going to discuss prior, but when we get into it, we're going to be talking about the Senate election here in Tennessee between Marsha Blackburn and Phil Bredesen. And with our next episode, we're going to be talking about the governor's race, and then the one following, which will end our series, we will be talking about some of the congressional races and some of the local races that are going on with the state legislator.
But before we get into that, I think we should address something that's in the
current
current events going on. We have President Trump's Supreme Court Justice nominee. What's his name? Brett Kavanaugh.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh.
There's some things going on in the news currently. Some suggestions that he might have either sexually assaulted somebody back in the early 80s when he was in high school, and there's someone that's coming out accusing him of it, and there are some hearings that are probably going to go down this week. So we thought it'd be wise to just kind of give that a little bit of a rundown. So I'm gonna let Ken drop some bars.
Let's do it. So this hearing, it's pretty historic, really, because the Supreme Court of the United States is in a great transitional period. We're kind of seeing a tactic unfortunately from the Democrats' playbook that they've played several times. Some of you may remember back in the 2000s about Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill, kind of that controversy with the sexual allegations against him. We see these come out of the woodwork quite often with these Republican figures. But this confirmation has been very controversial. It's taken over the news cycle for, the past 2 weeks almost.
2 weeks, yeah.
And, this woman, this professor, Christine Blassie, she's a professor at a university, very left-leaning, there's a lot of conflict of interest, it seems like, with her. And it's really concerning that the media really seems to be trying Brett Kavanaugh, trying his integrity through the news media. It's like a trial by media instead of a regular procedural trial, which is really concerning. We kind of saw some of this back with the Senate election, special election in Alabama with Roy Moore and Doug Jones, and a lot of these allegations, I think they should be listened to, be taken, and the facts should be heard. But this woman, she's come forward after 36 years. This is something that happened back in the 80s, and a lot of her testimony just hasn't added up. It's not very, there's not good information. She hasn't came out and said, she can't remember what year it happened, but she remembers how old she was. She was 15. She said that he was at a party with her, that him and this other guy came on to her. She tried to push him away, and he kept on trying. And they're kind of blowing this out of proportion of the allegation, and he's denied it over and over again. And the Senate, the Judiciary Committee, has been so accommodating to her accusations. They've been trying to get her to come in and give her testimony. But what's really concerning about this whole situation is that Senator Dianne Feinstein on the Judiciary Committee has held on to this letter since July. Since July, she's kind of had it in her back pocket. And it's hard to not see this as a ploy at the last minute, as in the 11th hour, as we've been seeing it called in the news media, to just derail this confirmation hearing. And she didn't even bring it up during the hearing. She waited until they were ended and then said, oh, hey, by the way, I've got this letter with this allegation from this lady.
Has some information.
Well, you talked a bit about some of the conflicts of interest earlier when we were off air. What are some of those conflicts that you were referring to in terms of like this specific individual?
Right. So I've seen a few stories the past week where her parents apparently had a foreclosure suit that Kavanaugh's mom, she was the judge on. I found out that she dismissed it. And so I'm not sure how much of a conflict that is. And then I also saw another article that said that her brother had worked for Fusion GPS, not Fusion GPS, I'm sorry, the law firm that hired Fusion GPS to do the opposition research for the PP dossier, Steele dossier.
Yeah.
And you read that, that's some pretty crazy stuff. Basically that dossier said that Trump went to Russia, hired some Russian prostitutes, stayed in the same room as Obama, and had them pee on the bed. Just, I mean,
Okay, so I don't mean to interrupt, Ken, but so what this really is they're trying to take small ties or little things and then blow it out of proportion. So we've seen this before. I've got to play devil's advocate because I always do on this podcast. But you brought up a good point when you said that this is kind of trial by media. And I mean, if we really think about it, a lot of things that happen now in our political culture have been trial by media here lately. Hillary Clinton herself, which I'm not a fan of, was basically tried by the media before she was ever tried by the people or the government or for anything else. I mean, people had already made opinions up on her prior to there actually being any sort of evidence, even though there was lack thereof, that was provided. So do you think that maybe, and I know this is a little off, but at the same time I feel this is kind of something we need to address. That was crazy. Do you think that that maybe we should, let's get the computer up there. Do you think maybe we should kind of reevaluate the length of time and maybe the quality of the process in which we release things in the media? Maybe instead of making a big deal out of it at first, maybe release the story and then kind of go back to the classic, like, I'm not going to bring anything up on this until I have actual valid information to back this up. Because what we've done is we have now put a seed in people's minds and we have told them one thing and we've convinced them of that same thing, whether it is invalid or not. And so, for instance, there's going to be people that dislike Hillary Clinton regardless of anything she might have actually done in her career. There's going to be people that no matter what, like when you say Bill Clinton, what's the first thing that you think about? The scandal. Do you see what I'm saying? But we completely ignore all of the other things because for a long time, and really in modern time is when this has happened, the media has taken specific events and they have thrown them and cast them in a certain way to where people end up viewing certain candidates or certain elected officials in a demeaning kind of way. Is that always just? No. some of it is called for. I mean, I do believe that Bill Clinton was guilty of the things that he was accused of, but I just kind of think it's ridiculous because you look at Kavanaugh and it's like, you even showed us this off air before we started. It's like one of these voters that they interviewed said, well, you know, what man with raging testosterone at his age when he's 17, 18 years old isn't going to be at a party with a bunch of chicks drinking beer, you know what I'm saying, around a pool? Like, why is that not going to happen? Because I remember going to those same parties when I was in high school. I mean, I don't think I ever did anything that I should, you know, be concerned with being brought back up.
Sure.
But at the same time, if it is to get brought up, why can't we look at it through that lens and go, you know, he was 17, 18 years old when this happened. Like, why are we acting like he is now some sort of rapist or something?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, this is ridiculous. And a lot of it goes back to the media. So, you know, I think we should advocate for that. And I know I do too, is advocate for truth through what it is that we do in the media. But maybe being more thorough.
Are you saying like, maybe we would like our media institutions to be more thorough before they release things?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it's our job to like, well, I'm not saying it's the government's job to go through and be like, okay, now let's make sure everything is thorough, because then I'm pretty sure that's going to be a loophole. And that's it.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, that's a conflict of interest.
Hey, that's not all your
You know,
time.
I mean, I feel like that's the media's job.
Yeah.
You know, like your job is to release a story, right? But when you're releasing something, you want to make sure that what you're releasing represents you and the person and the people, persons, or company that you represent, because you're an appendage of them. So like, therefore, even if it's CNN and you feel like everything they release is garbage, your job as a reporter should be to go out of the way, if you work for them, and release good quality information. Not this BS that we're seeing, and it's coming from all major news outlets. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
News media has become an entertainment outlet. Okay,
You're exactly right.
we talk about things like fashion shows and stuff, and then when something big comes up like Kavanaugh, we like to turn it into like, you know, modern soap opera drama like TV, and that's not the point. I mean, we need to address this fact that, like, if this happened, yes, it is wrong, but at the same time, I mean, he was 17 years old, and there's probably a whole lot of other people and a whole lot of other things that we could be going after, not some like scandalous he said, she said kind of stuff, when we don't even have real proof that any of this happened.
Yeah,
You know?
and the problem with it is that, you know, this whole situation, this whole accusation is, you can't disprove it, because you're, like you said, it is just a he said, she said, and so he's thrust into the worst position possible, to where, you know, if he says that he denies it, they question him, they question if he, what really gets me is if he questions it, they call him, you know, sexist or hates women. You know, I was showing Nick a clip earlier of this senator from Hawaii, and she had an interesting clip that she spoke, and she said, her name's Mazie Hirono, Democratic senator from Hawaii, and she said that basically that men of this country just need to shut up and step up and do the right thing for a change, and that men are responsible for the perpetuation of sexual assault in this country. And so basically, if you're a man, you're lying, you're guilty automatically, and if you're a woman, you're always telling the truth. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, and I think, I mean, I know what she's getting at. There's a better way to put that, and that would maybe be that, you know, you take these situations and you don't take them with a grain of salt. You do take them, and you take that as like honest word, whether it is or it isn't. But we need to go back to the whole, like, you know, I'm going to take your word for it until proven otherwise. You know what I mean? So I think that's something that we need to take into consideration.
Well, what's interesting about that, though, is that we've seen so many cases where they've kind of turned into defamation cases because there's no grounds to basically charge these individuals.
There's not proof. Do y'all remember Anthony Weiner?
Well, yeah, exactly.
I mean, but there was legit proof. You see what I'm saying? Like, there was legit pictures and text to show what he has done. And so, yes, his character and everything he was defamed. But you're right. We're defaming people like Kavanaugh, and there's literally no actual proof that any of this happened.
This is exactly why we can discredit what she said just now, blaming it all on men. This is not just men being the cause of this. I mean, the entire left is to blame in this situation as well, if you really want to point fingers. But at the same token, what does that do? Does that ever really solve a problem? She never really offered any solutions. She's just
No, you just pointed
she's
the
just
finger.
crying out.
Exactly, and you pointed the finger in the other direction to remove anything oncoming to you, and like at that point, she loses validity in her argument.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what we've come down to. I mean, we literally are living and existing in a world nowadays to where one thing can shape the rest of your life. I mean,
Right.
I know this sounds horrible, but if I got accused of sexual assault in college, that would follow me for the rest of my life, no matter what it is that I do afterwards, and whether I was actually guilty or
That's
not.
right.
You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous, and it's just like you got the whole thing, and then this is a different topic, but it's like the whole like, for instance, dads that don't pay child support get this whole like deadbeat dad thing. But did you
Right.
ever think that maybe they're a deadbeat dad because they're having to pay so much they can't actually do anything for those kids? You know, there's always another side to that story. There's always something else going on, and at this point, it's kind of sad because like Kavanaugh can only say so much and not incriminate himself. You know what I mean? Because if he goes out there and he's like, oh yeah, I was drinking and having fun and messing around and I did this and that, and then all of a sudden it's going to spin out of control and it's going to look like he did these things that he's saying he didn't do. So like, even if you keep your mouth shut, you're guilty. If you open your mouth, you're guilty.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have to get back to the hard, cold facts of the matter, right? I mean, that's a big issue that we see on the left in every single case. There's some sort of story that they've told each other, that they've told the voters, that they've told themselves, that they're victimized. It's always a story. It's always, how do you feel in this situation, as opposed to what's the reality of the matter?
Yeah.
What's really going on? Like have you even looked at the statistics?
It's like
Can
the
you present
facts,
us?
Yeah.
You know,
No, I agree.
it's just
Well,
ridiculous.
man,
I mean,
it's
we're
sad
bringing that
because
to
you know
the-
what this really does. This is the way I look at it. The counterculture that they have introduced, this whole men are bad, men do this, men do that, to oppress women, to oppress this, to oppress that. That has actually made it even. Excuse me. It's made it worse in my mind. Because then what you've done is you've actually taken the seriousness of the matter and you've inflated it so much that we don't really pay attention to it like on a daily basis. So what I'm saying here is that like women that are being sexually assaulted, women that are products or women that are victims of sexual assault, you know what I mean? Like those children that live in those households, the women that really did suffer, their validity is now lost because we're literally taking it and it can be used like the snap of a finger to ruin somebody's life, and so therefore we never really know if it's valid or not. So it's the whole like cry wolf thing.
It's a
You know what I
political
mean?
football.
Exactly.
Well, yeah,
and
I mean,
that's
we're-
what we've done.
We're turning the courtroom into a joke. I literally go on to YouTube to watch these court cases to get a good laugh. I'm watching this as entertainment now. This is not like your normal news channels where you go on and you see Judge Judy. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
These are serious cases. These are cases being held in the Supreme Court, and we're making jokes of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty disheartening. Our justice system is just, we've let the media. It's almost like they're running the country, And I really think mostly journalism is dead. I think it has been for a while, and it's mostly just propaganda. They write stories with clickbait to get you to view it on the internet. They try to, it's not really about reporting the facts, but it's about making the news.
Yeah.
It's not about reporting it. It's about making it.
It's another story.
And that's how they get views. And it didn't used to be where they had the 24-hour news cycles, on TV with CNN
things
and
just shut
Fox and all
off
that.
Things just shut off at like 10:30 or something like that because everybody actually went to bed for once, and
There's a perpetual stream of information.
Mhm.
This stream's right from the last topic on the last podcast. We are now integrated into the web, and it's in our hand all the time. So it's easy access. You'd be laying in bed. I do it, and it's so easy. Just pull out your phone. You don't even have to pull it out. It's already in your hand.
Yeah,
And you just-
9 times out of 10 you already have it in your hand anyways.
There's information, and the news. If you scroll left a little bit, if you have an iPhone, there's the news. There's like 4 to 6 articles, and what I've noticed is that for the last year, maybe even longer, lose track of time with all this stuff. Donald Trump his name is in at least 3 out of the 6.
Yeah.
So that's just, there's something odd about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, because what we've done is, come on now, everyone knows this. Are we going to sit here and report on Donald Trump day in and day out for 24 hours straight? Yes, it
Pretty
is
much.
his administration because he is the president of the United States. That's just the truth.
Fair enough.
But here's the thing. There are other things we could be talking about right now. Okay? The political spectrum does not just involve what's going on in this nation. It involves things that go on in other nations. It involves foreign affairs. There's so many other things that we could be talking about instead of the fail rate of Donald Trump and his administration, or the made-up fail rate of Donald Trump and his administration, or his tweets. Like, let's get over ourselves. If we're going to sit here and talk about his tweets, all right, there's a whole lot of people that I want to go back and talk about their tweets too, because they're just as controversial. They're just not presidents. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think it's a little ridiculous that we like to consume ourselves with things, like I said, that is like watching drama on television. We need to be talking about real things. I would rather the news pan in and listen to like what C-SPAN is and listen to these hearings. I would rather see that and absorb that than hear these things and see protests on the television and hear about Donald Trump's tweets and how he's a horrible president or how he's a great president. I don't want to hear all that. I already have formed my opinions on that. Therefore, that's why I voted. Okay? I'm ready to hear the stuff that's affecting me day in and day out. Like, what's the next taxes that you're passing that are going to affect me here? Okay? What's the next thing that's going to happen in the job force? All right? Is there going to be an increase? How's the stock market doing? When's the last time we talked about the stock market? They literally have a rundown for 5 minutes.
If you're on Trump's side,
I mean,
it's like a good thing. It's like, oh, the stock market's it's never been this high.
Right, that's my point. But like, we
It's all
don't
because of
actually spend
Obama.
time talking about things that are important. You know what I mean? And that's the whole point that I'm making, is that like, we would rather talk about things that make us feel good or make us feel bad, because here's the thing. When they add emotion to something, or they add emotional to appeal to something,
Right.
you're going to always come back. You will always tune back in and listen. And so you have these people that sit at home and they flip through the channels, different news channels, catching the same story, no matter what it is, just spun a different way. You know?
Do you think
It's-
there's a connection between the news, most news agencies, and like this perpetual stream of women accusing prominent figures in politics of various sexual assault acts, rape, so on and so forth, and then their political group, the Democratic Party, essentially, isn't always backing those people? What is going on there?
I mean, the thing is that's something wrong too. I mean, because here's the thing. I'm a Republican, and I don't even like that term. I'm conservative in some of my beliefs. But I support those women too. You see what I'm saying? I back them too. I believe their stories too until proven otherwise, because that's what we're supposed to do. I think the problem is that the left has now put that on their back, and they've added that to their bandwagon appeal.
Do you
see
think they
what I'm
really
saying?
care? Or are they
And-
using it?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, do they really care about the black vote? Because the last time I remember, they haven't really done a whole lot for the minority vote. I hate to be mean to anybody out there, but that is the truth. Okay, we have had presidents in our past. I believe it was was it Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ? He said that I can't remember what it was that he passed. I'm gonna really have to go back and look into it. But he said, with this, we're gonna have the black people voting for the Democratic Party for 200 plus years. And I don't know about you, but look onto this. They're still voting for the Democratic Party. Okay, I'm not even kidding you. I can go and talk to my friends, and you just walk up and you ask them. You say, "Hey, brother, who'd you vote for in the last election?" If they voted, I can guarantee you it was a Democrat. All right, and that's what bothers me the most, is that shows the lack of information. Like, if the information is there, remember, this goes back to last week's podcast. The information is there. I do not feel sorry for you anymore if you're not educating yourself on what you need to be voting on. Do you see what I'm saying? So what they've done is they've put it on their bandwagon. And to answer your question, no, I don't think they really care. I don't, because if they really cared, there would be some things being done to change this. Okay, making a spectacle out of a man, Kavanaugh is who I'm speaking of, that is honestly probably not guilty of these things. All right, making a spectacle out of this and putting this all over the news media for your vote, to get more people to vote for you.
Well, to defame him enough,
Yeah.
where he can't be the.
But it's as ridiculous. But see, here's the thing: if we honestly are at that point to where we're going to literally ruin a potential Supreme Court justice, okay, defame him enough with something like sexual assault. If we're getting that serious, if they cannot find other ways to say that he is underqualified other than the fact of sexual assault, there's a serious problem going on.
Sure. And
Because if that many men that come up for any kind of position are being accused of sexual assault, and we've seen it, it runs rabid right now on the right. Okay, every other person that runs, they're digging something up on them. If every one of them was a racist, a sexist, a bigot, or somewhere in between, or a rapist, there is a legit problem with the right, and I have a hard time accepting that every single one of them fits into one of those categories.
Well, it's their playbook, and it's this whole idea of, this trial by media that you're guilty until you're proven innocent.
Exactly,
in
and
the
that's
court
backwards.
of law,
Yeah.
it is you're innocent until you're proven guilty.
Well, and there's something funny. I think it's like 60-something% of the people in Congress are actual attorneys, and they can't even tell you that. They'll tell that to you, but then
Sure.
they act backwards on it.
Well, something interesting I just thought of. There was, it hit the news cycle. I was a few months ago, maybe a year ago. I think it's been about a year ago. That there's this slush fund for congressmen and senators that if they're accused of sexual allegations, they use taxpayer money to pay these people off. But yet they don't want to talk about that. They just let it die in the news cycle.
So we'll need to
Why have
find
we-
that.
yeah,
need to
yeah,
find
why
that.
have we never-
Look
why-
that up real quick. I want to look that up.
But,
Not that I don't believe you, but I want to look that up because I wouldn't be surprised. Listen, man, I've heard so many things with certain connections that I have at the state legislature. I've heard so many different times that taxpayer dollars have been used to, buy certain housing facilities and stuff like that for people. I mean, I've heard about people taking trips overseas with somebody who's not their wife. You know what I'm saying? And that's funded on taxpayer dollars. And again, I don't know the validity of these, but I mean, these rumors do bounce around. And the thing is that if you're misusing taxpayer dollars for anything like that, again, that is a problem. We need to start addressing the actual problems and stop addressing the aftermath of the problem, which is what we're doing right now. We like to bring it up in the media, but we're not addressing what the root of the issue is. And therefore, if we don't address the root of the issue, we're not really solving it. Is the issue sexual assault? No, okay, because that probably didn't happen. The issue here is we're now using media as a tool to slander people's character. So here's the thing, if Kavanaugh does not get this appointment, and even if he does, how is this going to literally affect the rest of his term? Okay, these are lifelong terms.
It is. Well, I think Clarence Thomas has been pretty successful. I keep referring to him, but he's a really good jurist, especially if you take a constitutionalist. It's weird even saying that about the Constitution, but if you believe the Constitution is a set of principles and laws that are to regulate our government, to limit them, to protect us from the government, he's great at that. As opposed to someone that thinks that the Constitution should be reformed by judges, amended by judges, or that it's this working document that is just subject to whatever the times may call for. But it seems like whenever a Democrat gets accused by a woman of some kind of sexual assault or physical assault by a woman, that it's not taken as seriously. I remember Keith Ellison, who is the deputy chair of the DNC right now, and just got the Democratic nomination for the Attorney General in Minnesota, was accused of assaulting his girlfriend. And the media just didn't really catch on to it. I think Fox may report on it some, and of course some of your online websites reported on it. But it just didn't go anywhere. And this lady had detailed notes from her psychologist, from her therapist about this, and it's just,
That's evidence.
why doesn't that make the media? Well, what the crap? It's
Yeah,
one-sided.
Who was the last Democratic senator or representative? Was it Chuck Schumer? Was it Chuck Schumer who was recently accused of something like that? Of grabbing someone's butt or something?
I don't
It
know.
was Al Franken.
Al Franken.
Oh,
They
Al
had pictures.
Franken.
Maybe
Well,
she
yeah, and that was
was
something
No,
funny.
he's
I
in there.
remember when that happened, and they took it serious. But if you notice, this is just another example. It was in and out of the media in like 3 or 4 days
Yeah,
he still has
because
his
Al
job.
Franken literally apologized. He still has his job, and like his character's not defamed. It's not something we
Yeah.
continue to bring up and talk about. And so the thing is like, why aren't we treating everybody else the same way? And it's sad because there's proof for these things. And for some reason, a few years back, like I said, with Anthony Weiner, they
Right.
took him to the slaughterhouse. Okay, they ruined him. All right, and it blows my mind that they're going to do that, and his own party didn't even back him.
Well, what did he?
Okay.
They had some pretty strong evidence.
Well, they did have strong evidence, but here's the thing, though. That's my point, though. They did that to him with strong evidence. They're trying to do the same thing to Kavanaugh, and they don't even have the same strong evidence. If we're going to do that to Anthony Weiner, I expect the exact same treatment of Kavanaugh.
Right.
I expect that of anybody that you're going to consider, because, like I said, we live in a world right now where if a male gets accused of some sort of sexual misbehavior or sexual misconduct, it can ruin him. If that is the extreme that we're living in, then I expect valid proof every single time there is an accusation.
Right.
Until otherwise, I will stay silent. I'm not going to take one side or the other, but I'm going to tell you every time. If you don't have proof, I don't want to hear it, and I'm not going to jump on your bandwagon and be like, yeah, roast Kavanaugh, because here's the thing. We don't know this. We don't know enough about this at this point, so there's no point in going over this with him. We've literally blown this out of proportion.
Well, that's an interesting thing you say. If there's no evidence, you're right. That's why they're trying to have a trial, a hearing. But
Yeah, that
she
brings us to another
doesn't
good
want to
point.
show up.
Yeah, she don't
why
want to
did
show
Ken,
up.
Go ahead, Ken. Tell us, why does she not want to show up?
It's still Monday.
So, Politico had a report just in about 5 hours ago, and I was reading this on the way home in the car. Yeah, I was looking at Twitter in the car. I shouldn't be doing that.
Red
but
light, right?
Arrest me.
Red light.
Yeah. And it says Brett Kavanaugh's left-wing accuser says she can't make it to Monday's hearing because she's scared to fly in an airplane. This is like a 40, 50-year-old woman that's scared to fly in an airplane to
Okay,
go.
so is it that hard? If she needs to be there at this hearing, you understand that somebody could have bought her a bus ticket too. So again, there is no excuse to not be here at this hearing.
Well-
If you have such valid proof, you're going to show up at that hearing and you're going to say otherwise, or you're going to say he did this. This is the proof that it actually happened. You know, and here's something else. This is something that always has bugged me about this whole sexual assault, accusations of rape, and things like that. The one thing that bothers me the most is that a lot of the people that come forward, they actually never had anything like a rape kit done or anything like that.
Oh, yeah, of course not.
So they come forward, and again, I'm not saying this to demean anybody that's ever had this happen to them. That's not my point here. I feel sorry for you. I support you, and I'm gonna do what I can to be an advocate for you. But if you're gonna come forward 20 years later or whatever it is,
36 years.
okay, so 36 years later, okay, I'm sorry. I have a problem with that, because at that point, a lot of the evidence that you would have is no longer going to be adaptable to our technology. Okay, there were no cell phones, so it's not like there was any text messages between the two of these people. Okay, goes back to the he said, she said. All right, if there's no proof, I just can't accept it. You know what I mean?
Kavanaugh's been a prominent judge for a long time. What has she been waiting on?
Exactly. So why'd she wait on it? Why did she wait for him to get this far? Why did they dig this up right now? You know what I mean? Like, here's the thing. Had he have not got this appointment, or had he had not made it this far, would have she brought the same information forward?
Or if
probably not.
Or if Hillary Clinton had won
Oh,
the
exactly. This
election,
stuff-
and he was her nomination.
Oh, this wouldn't have happened at
It's like
all.
the Titans
No,
running
it wouldn't have happened at
the
all.
play.
Because that would have been against the narrative. See, that's what we're doing here. We're going against the narrative. All right? And as much as it hurts me to say there even is some sort of narrative, we just need to, we've got to sit back and understand that if there's not valid proof for these things, we need to stop attacking it. All right?
Yeah.
We need to stop creating an epidemic out of something that's not really an epidemic. All right? Therefore, we can actually sit back and take the time with the people that have truly suffered from these things and are really dealing with these things psychologically, physically, and everything. Then we can put forth our time to deal with them and do it the right way. But if we just attack every single time we hear somebody say, oh, I was attacked, oh, this happened to me, oh, but it was like 25 years ago. Well, I'm not going to be rude, but what am I going to do for you if this happened 25 years ago? I can only do so much.
Well, and, you know, most of these cases are way outside of the statute of limitations. You can't even try it in a criminal court.
There you go.
You know, and what's kind of interesting, and this is kind of maybe on a similar vein, that this whole Me Too movement, you know, some of these people are valid, and then some of them just aren't.
Well, some of them are. I actually have a friend of mine that's a part of the Me Too movement, and she's actually on the right. or
Yeah,
she's
some of
center
them are
right,
valid.
and some of them are valid, and that goes back to what I'm saying. It ruins the validity of what they're
Yes.
doing when you have other people that
Yes,
are in there
exactly.
just trying to be involved with some movement that makes them feel better about themselves.
Well, and one of the ladies that kind of spearheaded this movement, Asia Argento, it came out maybe a month ago that she groomed this child actor, and I'm trying to remember his name. He was the young Captain America in the Captain America movie.
Steve Rogers.
It wasn't the actor for Steve, but it was a
That's
younger
the name
actor.
of Captain America. Good Lord,
Yeah.
look at me. I'm clearly a fan of comics.
But she had sex with this kid when he was like 16 or 17.
Oh yeah, and he got accused of assault, didn't he?
No, he didn't. But
Alright,
she was
sorry.
one of the leaders of the Me Too movement against Harvey Weinstein.
Really?
And yet, she was guilty
Wow.
of having a sexual situation with a child. I mean, pedophile. There's a lot of them are just virtue signalers, and like you said, these kinds of situations just, hurt the people that have actually been sexually assaulted
Exactly.
and damaged for life.
Was she proven? Like, was it proven that she had done this, or?
I mean, yeah, they had her lawyer paid the kid, I think it was hundreds of thousands
So
of
they had a
dollars.
settlement.
Yeah, there was hush
So
money.
it kind of showed like there was
Yeah.
some sort of guilt. See, there's not even a settlement right now with Kavanaugh, which again, if somebody's settling on something,
But it doesn't-
most of the time, over 50% of the time when you're settling, it's a way to get it in and out of court fast.
Yes.
It's a way of admitting guilt without actually admitting guilt because you're trying to lay aside the problem. If there is no settlement with anything, then usually that's because that person firmly believes they're not guilty.
Right. Yeah, so here I'm going to pull this up, see if I can find some more on this, because it's been a while since I looked at it. It was back in August. But there was a payment. Let's see. It was about $380,000 to Jimmy Bennett. And, it's a lot of money. But it's like Dalton was saying, that a lot of times these cases, can just be to get someone just to not make a deal out of it, just to be
Right,
quiet,
right.
make it go away, even if it's true or if it's not true. But I don't think he really ever denied it. The kid did. And he says here that he's claimed it. And she was 37 and he was 17. I mean, that's just disgusting. I mean, and she's one of the leaders of this.
So essentially, there seems to be clear motivation for this accusation of Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
It's not just this woman coming out of the woodwork. Well, they did. She's coming out of the woodwork, but it's not. There seems to be some strings attached.
Yes.
We can't prove it, but there is a trend going on with the accusations of Donald Trump, now his Supreme Court nominee.
Yeah.
And it's coming at the 11th hour. So there seems to be some stuff going on. So we would just suggest, I would suggest maybe not just trust what you're hearing.
Right.
It may or may not be true, but there's definitely some fishy stuff going on, and the politics is running rampant. It's deeply connected. So you have your radar up, obviously, But I think it'd be a good time to transition into our second topic. Dalton?
Oh, okay. So we're gonna kind of take a turn here and start talking about the Senate election in Tennessee. So this is between Phil Bredesen and Marsha Blackburn, for those of you that don't know. And so I just had a question for everybody here, and I kind of want to hear everybody's answer or see what they think about this answer. But here it is. So Phil Bredesen, for those of you that don't know, was the governor of Tennessee. In 2006, when he ran for re-election, he won all 95 counties in the state of Tennessee. He also collected more votes than any other gubernatorial candidate in state history. So my question to you guys is, how do you think this information and how do you think that situation in itself is going to affect the current race when he's running against Marsha Blackburn, who is a seated congresswoman?
Well, I mean, he's running in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
So the governor race, that was you said for his governor race, he won 90 something.
Yeah, when he was the governor before Bill Haslam,
He won 95.
in his re-election 2006, he won all 95 counties. And just real quick to set the record straight here, he is the Democratic candidate for this Senate seat. Marsha Blackburn is the Republican for this Senate seat. So I'm just trying to figure out how you guys think that situation and how his dominance in running that gubernatorial race is going to potentially affect the Senate race where he's not running for near as many counties. You see what I'm saying?
The gubernatorial race, that's obviously a statewide race.
Yes.
The Senate race is a statewide race. It's not dependent upon where you live, as long as you're in the state of Tennessee. So I think it's going to definitely deeply affect it.
Well, you have,
Because he was
yeah, but
popular on a macro level in the state of Tennessee, and now there's another election going through. He's a common face who was a pretty good governor, a very popular governor when he got elected and while he was in term. So I think that's definitely going to affect it. You know, he's a comfortable face, and you know the opposition doesn't seem to be principled. So yeah, I think
right, and throwing somebody up like Phil Bredesen, who not only is a well-recognized face in Tennessee, but is still to this day a very well-known figure in the Democratic Party. I mean, a lot of people like to think that Phil Bredesen was actually selected by people higher up because of the fact that this seat's so significant right now. It would be nice to split Tennessee in half, especially with Lamar Alexander coming up for re-election in 2020 and also looking like he's going to have either a tough race or potentially run against a really tough Republican too. So their idea is to try to split this state in half.
Well, what's interesting about this is that. Wow.
Oh shoot.
Okay. So. So we basically just had a. Everything's falling apart. The devil is near.
One of our phone stands fell, so we're just gonna have to reset that real quick. But we're still running live, I believe, on YouTube, aren't we?
Good job, Jack.
Somebody, real quick, drop a piece of toast with jam on it. If it lands jam side down, the devil's here.
You know, you have to move that clip.
Well,
You see it?
Dalton is here.
Dalton
See that
Dalton is
clip on the
here.
back of the stand?
Goodness.
Yeah, you use that
Shots
to create the
fired.
suction. See, now put it up against the window, and then clip it back. Oh God! All right,
Well,
we're still having technical
okay,
issues.
so
You guys just keep going.
Yeah, we're gonna keep talking on YouTube because this is an important subject matter.
So
for us
okay,
to talk about.
so we were talking about Bredesen, right? So
Yeah.
Bredesen won all 95 all 95 counties in the state of Tennessee, which is predominantly a red state.
Well, here's the most important factor and this is something that Nick didn't pick up on, but I want to remind you, he won all 95 counties in his re-election.
Right.
Okay, the significance of that means that he was our governor for one full term. All right. And had enough favorability to come out and still win 95 counties
Yes.
after already being our governor. That to me shows serious significance because clearly there weren't even enough people that disliked him to put up enough of a defense
Yeah.
for him not to win 95
Yeah,
counties.
it wasn't like it was some new guy jumping onto the scene that was, center left that everybody could
Exactly.
agree with. It was what had he done in this, past, past term.
Yeah, past
that he
term.
did. But what's interesting about this whole thing too, just an interesting observation is that we are predominantly a red state, right?
Yeah.
Tennessee is a red state. I mean, Donald Trump won our state, for example, and that's actually why Marsha Blackburn is using his policies as basically her entire campaign strategy. But seeing somebody on the Democratic side win 95 counties, other than the fact that it was from his term, I think it shows what type of politician he is as well.
Yeah.
He is very middle of the road. He's about as far right as you can get when it comes to the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Which is why he's so popular, especially currently when you see so many people that are becoming nonpartisan with their voting tactics, I guess. Or either they're voting independent or they're not voting at all because they feel like they don't have representatives that are, representing them as the people. So he kind of turns into one of those individuals where I feel like I'm getting represented on both sides, or represented on both.
Sides.
Yeah, because he's somewhat nonpartisan.
Well, and here's the funny thing, and to me, that's actually kind of a little scary about the whole situation in general, is that I would have viewed Phil Bredesen as more of a moderate Democrat back during that election. But since then, Phil Bredesen, based on where he's put his money, doesn't really own up to that
Right.
same moderate standpoint. And so what bothers me is that he can run on that, and he's convinced enough people due to his prior service as our governor that that's what he is. But this time around, whether you feel like he is or he isn't, the truth is he's not. Okay, he's not as moderate as he used to be, but to say that he's not going to play that card would be wrong.
Well,
Okay, so he knows how to
Right.
run these races. He knows how to run a tough race, and he's been there and he's done that before. And the scary thing about it is that, in my mind, Marsha has never ran a campaign against this difficult and this prepared of an opponent before. So she doesn't know really what it's like to run against a tough Democrat that not only won the entire state of Tennessee in his governor or his re-election campaign for governor, but at the same time, he's going to play the middle of the road candidate, even though he's really not the middle of the road candidate. And
Yeah.
how is she going to choose to buffer that? Like, what is her strategy to buffer that and show otherwise?
he's okay. So that brings up another point. He's actually not really. He's not really campaigning as much as Marsha Blackburn is
No.
right now. He's letting her kind of dig her own grave right
Yeah.
now.
Oh yeah. He's released. I think he's released 2 ads. He has an active Facebook page and stuff that, of course, is promoting and campaigning and stuff. But as far as like door knocking goes and grassroots goes, her grassroots campaign is huge. Okay, and I can tell you right now, I don't think his grassroots campaign, from my experience in doing this, is as large as hers. But I think the difference in that is that he's relying a lot on his name and his stature in the state.
Yeah.
That could be bad, okay? Because we've seen that happen before. I mean, look, Hillary Clinton tried to rely on her name and who she was. Excuse me. And it didn't benefit her all that well in the end, okay? But I still think there's something to say for like the amount of respect you can owe somebody like that, because he's taking this risk, but he's also taking it in like full preparation for the fact that like he really thinks he's going to win this. I mean, I'm telling you right now, his campaign thinks that this is going to be a shot in the, like a shot, well, not a shot in the dark. They think this is going to be,
Slam
you know,
dunk.
slam dunk. Really,
Well, yeah.
yeah, I couldn't get it out, but that's what this
Yeah.
is going to be.
Well,
for
when
them.
you have the previous Senate seat, that is one of your best friends. He had done.
Oh, yeah, you have
Bob Corker. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean he
Bob
did.
Corker, who can that video. We'll share that video that you
Well,
sent with me the other day.
Okay. So a lot of they had actually done a lot of business together in the Chattanooga area. They've been friends for a very long time. I watched a video the other day where they were asking Bob Corker. They were trying to catch him
Off guard.
Catch him off guard, exactly.
Well,
and
they did. That's the scary
They
thing.
did. Well, every single time that they brought up the subject, it's turned into a very awkward interview
Yes.
because Phil Bredesen, Democratic nominee for the Senate seat, replacing a Republican in that Senate seat.
Yeah,
Bob
outgoing
Corker.
Bob Corker.
Exactly. So I mean, Bob Corker sent the maximum amount to support Marsha Blackburn, but he also, the first thing when they asked him, "Who are you supporting?" You know, this is your friend. He's like, "Oh, obviously, I'm not going to campaign against him."
Right.
I mean, he
So-
still found a way to bring up his friend.
Exactly.
In that
So he
conversation.
obviously got defensive. So the first thing that I noticed, and the first thing that I really pay attention to in any kind of campaign like that, is when somebody gets defensive like that, there's always something else that I want to hear. Okay. There's always something else that I want to be aware of. And the fact that Bob Corker, and every time he answered the question, it was so scripted. He was like, well, I mean, did I not donate the max amount to Marsha Blackburn? Well, yeah, you did, but that really doesn't matter at this point, okay? Because I've donated money to multiple candidates that I didn't necessarily stand with on everything that they believed. I still donated money to them because I was trying to donate to somebody that I thought had the ability to win. So here's the thing. Is he donating the money because he thinks she can win? Or is he donating the money, like I said to you, Josh, because he maybe has political aspirations in the future and wants to still remain in somewhat good grounds with the Republican Party? Because remember, for all of us that don't know, Bob Corker had some sort of a issue with Donald Trump. He
Yes.
called Donald Trump's bluff quite a few times, and I'm not saying he necessarily made a fool of himself, but to the people in Tennessee and to the people that were supporters of Trump, they think Bob Corker looked like a fool.
Exactly,
Okay?
exactly.
And so Bob Corker is now trying to backtrack and create some credibility for himself at the same time, while still saying that, oh, well, I support the Republican candidate. But in every single interview, even after he says, you know, oh, well, I donated the max amount to Marsha Blackburn, what does he follow it up with? You know, but I am still good friends with Phil Bredesen, and I remain having good friendship with Phil Bredesen, so I try to stay out of that race.
Well, another thing though, he brought up in that interview specifically that party leaders basically were, they actually sent a document over to the media to ask him these specific questions,
Yeah.
almost to test his loyalty.
Yeah.
He brought that up and he like pointed out the elephant in the room.
Yep.
That, I mean, if that doesn't tell you
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I
what's
mean,
going on, then I don't know.
Again, that to me is part of a problem. Like Bob Corker in himself, yes, he's the outgoing senator in Tennessee right now, or one of our senators, but I have a hard time looking at the situation and then thinking that, you know, does he really support her? Is he only saying he supports her because it's going to benefit him in the future, or does he really? Because I don't know about you, but as an average Republican voter, if your previous senator doesn't seem like he's wholeheartedly behind Marsha Blackburn, the Republican candidate, but let's say you maybe voted for Phil Bredesen for governor, so you follow my train of thought here?
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you think maybe that voter would be more in line to go, well, I mean, he is friends with Phil Bredesen, and he doesn't really support Marsha, so man, I guess I'm going to support Phil on this one and vote for Phil.
Exactly.
Okay, that might seem like a shot in the dark, but that's true. That's how people think in the voter process, and that's how they
Yeah.
think in the state of Tennessee.
Well, what's also interesting about this, though, is Marsha could turn around and try to polarize it with her support for Trump's, policy.
Yeah.
I think that's what she's trying to do, but it's very, very ineffective because people actually vote on their emotion. Obviously, we've talked about this, and a lot of it actually comes down to subcommunication, correct?
Yep.
So in this situation, he is subcommunicating that Phil Bredesen is who I'm supporting.
Yeah.
He basically said that. I mean, subconsciously.
How do we think that the people in the state of Tennessee are processing this? Do you think that they're prominently, supporting Phil Bredesen, or are they buying into the Marsha Blackburn being in line with Donald Trump and her attack ads? She attacks Bredesen, and this is her platform.
Yeah, go ahead. Because I was going to ask a
So
question about it afterwards.
I support Donald Trump and everything that he wants to do. One, Phil Bredesen, not a good guy. Two,
Yeah, beware. I mean, okay, so here's the thing. This is funny because we talked about this earlier in the week, y'all. And it's funny because we've led ourselves into kind of the second big question about this race in general, and here it is. When running for an election, is it important for the candidates to discuss matters that actually, or to discuss issues that matter to the voting population? All right, and the reason I'm asking that is because when you look at Phil Bredesen, even in his advertisements, even in the things that he lets out on his Facebook page, he is always doing something to try to touch the people that are going to potentially vote for him. I don't care if it's fake. I don't care if it's a lie. That is a good campaign
Right,
tactic.
you're talking
You're
about-
making yourself known to the state. You are talking to Nick Carter, okay? You're talking to Ken, all right? And you're talking to Josh, and you're talking to Dalton. That matters more to the voter than the hogwash that's being thrown out to the media by Marsha Blackburn, because this is my problem. Marsha, I want to vote for Marsha and probably will, but I would like to see Marsha start to talk about issues in Tennessee. If you were going to be my senator in the state of Tennessee, or one of my senators in the state of Tennessee, that means when you go up there, you do things with the intent that it's going to benefit Tennessee. Do you know what Phil
right.
Bredesen said? When Phil Bredesen said, I'm running for this seat, he said, when I get to D.C., because you have to be confident, of course.
Sure.
So he said, when I get to D.C. and I'm your senator, he said, if Donald Trump has some legislation come through that I disagree with, but it's good for Tennessee, he said, I will vote for it. If it is bad for Tennessee, I will vote against it. And so what does that tell me? That tells me that as the voter, even though he stands on the different side of an aisle than I do, he's still going to do what's best for Tennessee, or he's saying he will. When was the last time Marsha released something that said what she was going to do for Tennessee? She keeps talking about the wall, okay? She keeps talking about things that are on a national level, and yes, that's important, okay, because that's her job, all right? But it's also important for her to remember that we elected her, therefore she still represents us. When she goes to D.C., she still represents us in Tennessee, does she not?
Yes.
That's my point.
She's
But
supposed to.
but she's supposed to, right? But if she's not behaving as if she represents the people, then what are we doing here? You know what I mean? I don't want to hear your soapbox if you're not going to actually do something for me when you get up there. That's my problem here. her campaign has not showed me yet that they're going to do things to support me and that benefit me as a voter. You know what I mean? They're not really standing for me, and that's my problem here. Is I want somebody that's going to stand for me in the Senate.
She's just showing everything that she's against, not necessarily what
And
she's for.
Well, and it's like Josh made a really good point. She is literally rounding off everything that Trump says, and she's trying to make it a Tennessee thing. Here's the truth, man. Illegal immigration, yes, it matters to the entire country, okay? But building the wall doesn't matter to Tennessee, okay? We'll probably vote for it either way because we're a red state, right?
Yeah.
But building that wall does not directly affect in Tennessee. It indirectly affects Tennessee, all right? Let's talk about the stuff that directly affects the state and legislation that directly affects the voters. Because if it's not directly affecting us, then why is it going to get our attention?
Well, I mean, tactically, she's making the same mistake that the left is making right now. If you really look at it, I mean, she is going for kind of this blanket statement to kind of round the troops up, and she's playing off of support for Trump when really Phil Bredesen is pulling a better Trump card in this election. It's almost ironic how that happens.
How do you think?
Well, okay, so Trump kind of came out of the dark, right? You know, nobody, he's an outsider, but everybody kind of saw his views in business, and they saw how he built this huge empire, right? So he still had credibility there.
Right.
But he directly talked to the people of the United States.
Yeah.
He was looking out for the little guy. He was looking out for the small business owner. He was looking out for...
Okay, so you're making the tie that Bredesen's doing a better job at, like, at least making it seem like he's looking out for the little guy in the vote.
Yeah, he's talking to individuals as opposed to talking to the collective, which is what the socialist left do.
Well, yeah, not just talking to the collective. Let's really pay attention to this. When people like Blackburn are running, they're not talking to the collective. They're talking to get the votes so they can get a position. It's almost as if they're talking to Congress itself. It's almost as if they're talking to the rest of the Senate themselves.
It makes,
I want to hear you talk to me.
It makes sense because of the position that she's running for, but to the people, they don't view it that way.
Right.
Because we don't even know what the Senate does. Like most of the people that are either tuning in on this right now, or anybody that kind of looks at politics like, I don't really follow that. Like, why don't you follow it? Oh, I don't see the significance of it. Why don't you see the significance of it? This literally dictates how your entire country is run, how your state's run.
Right.
And because they don't see the significance of it, all they see is kind of this idea that, you know, the federal government is going to take care of it or whatever, and they don't understand like how it actually works. They don't understand like what the tactics are, what the responsibilities of each individual candidate does, or each individual representative looks over. So her taking this approach, it's very intelligent because it's intelligent in turn, like to the intelligent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To somebody that actually understands that, yes, they would vote for it because it makes sense on a grander scale. But to the average American, the average Tennessean,
it doesn't make sense, and they don't understand those things, so therefore it's not really benefiting them.
Well, one of the issues that we've had with the Senate for a while was the passage of the 17th Amendment, which says basically that the Senate is popularly elected, whereas when the founders drafted the Constitution at the Philadelphia Convention, the Senate was to be selected by the state to represent the best interests of the state.
Exactly. So you actually had a state legislator basically appointing the two people that they thought were deemed fit to be your senators.
And now it's to where they're beholden to public opinion.
Exactly.
When that's not how it should be.
And that's how we held them accountable, though, because then, see, that's how the state legislator held them accountable. Because you could just then, at that point, retract that person that you appointed, right? And say, no, you are no longer deemed fit to serve this office on the federal level. Therefore, we're appointing, et cetera, instead, because we believe them to do a better job.
Well, I might play a little bit of devil's advocate here, but sometimes in our government we have a federal republic, and you know, it's in a republic you elect people to represent your best interest, and what the people want isn't necessarily what's best for them.
Right.
I remember reading through most of John F. Kennedy's book, Profiles in Courage, and it went through all these great senators of the United States that were very courageous in their job. And I remember reading about John Quincy Adams and just the struggle that he had. And this is way before the 17th Amendment, but the struggle that he had, and even back then in the early 1800s, of not being beholden to the public interest, but doing what's right for the people. And he wasn't very popular.
Right. No, I understand that. I mean,
That's the point of
Yeah.
the senators being, they're representing the state government.
Exactly.
They're not representing.
Exactly.
the-
That's
they
why they're
are representing the
representing
people
the
because
state.
the state government represents the people.
Exactly.
But it's a mechanism. It allows better accountability.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this is a part of that check.
It's not pure democracy.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, think
It's a
about that.
republic.
Let me put it
Exactly.
like this. There are a lot of people right now in the state legislature in Tennessee that are fed up with Lamar Alexander and they're fed up with Bob Corker, okay? So just let me give you a rundown on this. If we still had a system that was in play like that, I can guarantee you right now those people would not be our senators right now, okay? Does it seem a little reckless because you can go, oh, I don't like them, and with a good majority you can remove them, right? Yeah, I can see how that's a little reckless, but at the same time, here's what it comes down to, y'all. Their job is to represent us. It is plain and simple. It's written in paper. It's all over the place. Their job is to represent us. When they no longer represent us and what we want and what we vote for, then they're not doing their job, okay? This is why we used to put certain issues on the ballot, because then we could tell if they were actually representing us or not, because if we voted for that issue on the ballot and then they completely didn't vote for that issue and voted it down, then obviously they weren't taking care of our interest at hand. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So
I'm
see,
trying.
so the thing that I struggle with the most in this situation is that regardless who gets up there, whether it's Phil Bredesen or whether it's Marsha Blackburn, is it just going to be another corny situation to where they're not going to actually do what they say they're going to do? Because my gut tells me that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, but at the same time, how many people are you going to fool in the state that you're going to do otherwise? Okay, are we going to get stuck with a Republican that's going to do the same things and vote for all of the same things that anybody that's on Trump's side does? Or are we going to get stuck with a Democrat that says he stands up for the state and then does the complete opposite? So therefore, what happened? We're still screwed either way. So we have been stuck. And the funny thing is no one likes to relate the whole Trump election, Trump-Hillary Clinton election, presidential election to other elections. But that's happening in the state right now. We are in a dire situation to where if this seat gets turned blue, we could potentially start to see more Senate seats in this area in Tennessee, but also all across the nation that turn blue. I believe, and I don't know the numbers, but I think if Phil Bredesen won, it would give them, they'd be pretty close to a tie or a majority in
It depends on the
Senate.
other races.
It depends on the other races going on, but it would be pretty close. You know what I mean? And so this could just be the beginning of a foothold for them into really driving a wedge into the situation.
Well, I saw a story, it was either yesterday or today, that was pretty interesting. And it's not a national election, but it was in Texas. And there's this local, I believe it's a local Senate seat in Texas, in their state government, where this Hispanic Republican was running against this Hispanic Democrat.
Right.
And this Hispanic Republican in Texas had flipped a seat from being blue to red that had been a Democratic seat since the days of slavery. I mean, for 139
Right.
years, it was
Right.
held by a
When was
Democrat.
this? When did this happen?
A couple of days ago.
Wow, and also there's an Arizona Senate seat open right now, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
John McCain's seat.
Yeah, but he already got, the replacement for John McCain already got appointed. It kind of slipped through.
That's true.
Slipped through the cracks. No one really heard about that. Didn't
Nobody
make
talked about it.
MSM news. But I saw something interesting when the whole primaries were going on with the Republican and Democratic primary here in Tennessee
Yeah.
for the Senate seat. And I haven't looked up the numbers of previous years and how they reflect on the national election, the general election for senators. But I was just kind of surprised that Phil Bredesen in the primary got 349,718 votes, and this is from the Tennessee Secretary of State website.
This was which time? His re-election or his first?
No, this is right now for the
Oh, this
primary.
is right now for the primary. You're talking about in the primary.
Yes. And
We could see. Okay, go ahead.
and Marsha got 613,513 votes. That's almost double the turnout in the Republican primary than the Democratic primary. Of course, there's a lot of explanations, and like I said, I haven't looked up the numbers for previous
Right,
years.
but you also got to look at that Republicans can vote in Republican primaries, but I can't go and vote for a Democrat if I'm a registered Republican. So see,
Right.
when it actually comes down to it, how many of those Republicans are going to go and vote for Phil Bredesen because now they have the opportunity to vote for Phil
Yeah.
Bredesen? Because see, that's why both names will end up on the ballot. See, what's going to happen is when they go in and they voted for Marsha, they voted for Marsha against some other Republican. This is why it's the Republican primary. They voted against Marsha with other Republican candidates. You see what I mean? They couldn't vote for Phil Bredesen yet. But when they have the opportunity to vote for Phil Bredesen, maybe this is just
They
me.
could.
I'm willing to make a bet right now, but I bet you those numbers are a whole lot closer.
But typically, if people vote their party.
Well, yes, they do. But what I'm saying is in the Republican primary, when you go in, you can only vote for a
Of course.
Republican.
Yeah, they're close
So what I'm
primaries
getting
in
at
Tennessee.
is that number is huge. But if these were open primaries and Republicans could have gone in and voted for him, even in that primary, it might have been a completely different story.
Do you have to be a registered Republican to vote in the primary?
Well, I mean, if you're voting in the Republican primary, you
Yeah,
have to
so-
be a
Okay,
Republican.
so
You
how
become a
likely is it that a registered a lot of people vote Republican, but they're not registered
Right,
Republican.
right.
How likely is it for a registered Republican to vote for the Democrat?
Okay, well, how likely was it for those same registered Republicans to vote for him in 2006 when he ran for governor?
Right. I don't know what the
No,
situation
well, no,
was at
I'm
that
just
point.
no, I'm just saying, like I'm taking your question, but I'm hoping I'm answering it with another question. You see what I'm saying? Like there's many of those registered Republicans that even though they were registered Republicans, they still voted for him when it came down to it, or he wouldn't have won those counties.
Right.
Because if he won all those counties on blue votes, the state would have literally been blue. It wasn't. Okay,
Right.
we had rural Republicans in McMinnville, Tennessee, and in Smithville and Shelbyville and stuff like that, and in Eagleville, Tennessee, voting for Phil Bredesen.
Yeah.
I see Phil Bredesen signs right here in Murfreesboro in Rutherford County that is a solid red district.
Do you remember who he was running against? Was it a weak candidate?
I believe he. Well, I mean, I know he was a Republican in the state Senate, but I don't remember what necessarily his caliber was. But I mean, here's the thing, though. There was not a seated congressman that was going to step down to run for governor. It doesn't matter either way because I'll put it like this. If Donald Trump can come out of the middle of nowhere, run as a Republican and get those votes, yes, it sounds a little absurd, but if you put up a good state senator or something like that, if there was a Republican against Phil Bredesen, if the state that badly wanted a Republican governor, they would have made it happen. Okay? I mean, if they were registered Republicans, would they not? Because that's what it comes down to. Most people that actually vote just vote for the party that they've always voted for, do they not?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? So Phil Bredesen did a pretty good job of convincing a lot of Republicans that he was still worth their vote.
Currently or back then?
Well, back
So,
then.
Okay.
I mean, I'm hoping he's going to do the same thing because I mean, you would hope the guy doesn't give up a successful strategy. I mean, why would you ever do that? You know? But he's going to be playing off that card. So what I'm getting at is that that's a really good question that you asked. But at the same time, since we don't have open primaries, we don't really know those numbers. We can make up hypotheticals, but we won't really be able to tell until we see that day. I think it'd be cool to actually keep up with this as we go along, because if we actually did kind of like an impromptu podcast or like a quick segment or something like that, maybe on election night, and talked about the numbers, because you can watch the numbers tally in per county. Okay, so we could watch those numbers roll in, and it would be interesting to keep up with it as it goes along. I mean, it might be late, but it would still be worth it to keep
Let's
up
go
with
ahead
it
and
because
say
I
we're
mean,
probably gonna do
yeah,
that.
I'd say we're definitely going to do that because I mean, here's the thing: this race is important. We can talk about people and the candidates and whatever it is all day long, but this race in itself serves serious significance because this could be the start for the left in gaining some kind of hold in the Senate. This is a big deal.
Yes.
And if this race proves successful, call me crazy, but I'm willing to bet that a high-level Democrat in the state of Tennessee is also going to run for Lamar Alexander's seat in 2020. If you don't think that's going to happen, we might need to reevaluate where you stand in politics or in your political knowledge.
So that with that momentum, you think
But with
that it
that
could possibly
momentum,
be a
it's-
double flip?
There you go.
An entire flip.
There you go.
That would be crazy.
And see and then what we could potentially be looking at is potentially having two weak Republicans out, two strong, meaning like in the sense that they've never been senators. You see what I'm saying? So this will be Phil Bredesen if he wins. It'll be first-time senator kind of thing. You look at having strong characters from the Democratic Party take those weak Republican seats, and now all of a sudden you have what? You have congressmen and congresswomen that are Republican, but then your 2 senators are blue. Can you imagine what that would do to the state and the way we vote? It would almost cancel out a state that is always red and can always be counted on. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in situations that a state that's always going to give a yes vote to something that needs to happen for the right, now all of a sudden it's kind of a flop, because the Republicans now have to go and convince these 2 Democratic senators in the state of Tennessee to be like, oh my God, we always had your vote before, we need it now. I don't know about you, but that counts.
Yeah.
That counts, and that doesn't sound good.
Well, this election, like you said, is pretty significant, and I think it is, especially for the reason that the Democratic Party right now just doesn't have that great of a platform nationally, except that they want to oppose everything Trump does. They want to try to impeach him and do everything they can to obstruct his agenda, and I don't think that's making a straw man against their platform. And maybe it's the news media partly responsible for that, for always broadcasting it. But this administration historically has had problems getting their cabinet officials and other positions confirmed through the Senate. It's been stalled up.
So why is that? Why is it being stalled up? How is it being stalled up by what section of the situation, the political sphere? Is it all Democrats? Are there some Republicans? Is there any implications of why they're doing this, other than the fact that he's just the Republican president, and not only is he a Republican president, he's this really polar figure,
Yeah, so
I want to read y'all something whenever you're done, Nick. I want to read you something, okay? And I'm not going to put any names in here, okay?
I was just asking Ken a question.
yeah, I think.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, but I didn't know. I thought y'all were just chatting.
I think it's a little bit of, it's just for some reason it's not coming up when they conduct their Senate sessions. I remember Mitch McConnell saying that they're going to skip some of the August recess to try and confirm some more judges, but you still have a lot of cabinet officials, and I think it's maybe you have some Republicans that aren't really on board. We know there's been some in some cases in policy, but I think it's just opposition from the left, really, and I could be mistaken on that, but that's what it appears like.
So it's the partisan reality of United States politics. He is on the other side.
Well, he's an outsider.
He's an outsider and on the other side. So typically, the Democrats, they'll play more ball with like a George Bush type person. He's on the right. He's a Republican president, but
he's more moderate.
Right.
Bush
so
is
because Trump is not only is he not only is Trump Republican, well, he is now. He seems to represent something.
He is now.
He was a Democrat at one point.
Yeah.
New York, right?
Well, no, a lot of his policy, his thoughts, when you go and look throughout the years, have been relatively the same. He's flipped on some things and kind of changed his positions, I think, like we all do.
Right.
But it just seems like, there hasn't been an administration that's had this much obstruction to getting these confirmations through the Senate, which is one of the primary purposes. They're supposed to advise and consent to appointments.
Yeah, he's coming in to try to change some things, trying to shake things up, and that's exactly what he's doing. So
That's right.
It's interesting. Why would these people not want things to change? There's a status quo that is, and a lot of people in Washington D.C. want it to continue.
Okay. Something else that's interesting about Donald Trump is, he could have easily put in immediately. It's been what, 2 years since he's been in office almost.
Yeah, almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
Or
Yeah, he
like
could have
shortly.
immediately put in executive action after executive action. He hasn't really done that.
I mean, he did it for a bit.
Yeah, but it wasn't like he hasn't gone overboard with it. Like you see,
Right.
you see what I'm saying? Like he still, in some ways, still believes in the Constitution or the system.
Yeah,
the system of
that's a
checks
good
and
thing.
balances.
A lot of executive orders, end up almost nowadays having the force of law. Unfortunately, we had that Iran deal that we were in that wasn't confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah, he had 16% approval rating on that.
Yeah,
16%.
that's pretty
he
crazy.
did it anyway. 16%
Of the Congress or Senate?
Senate.
of the Senate.
And treaties like that are supposed to be confirmed by the Senate. It's outrageous. It's kind of the same deal with this Paris Climate Accord.
Yeah, I mean it's a double standard though. I mean they're pointing fingers at him, calling him a fascist, calling him Hitler and stuff like that. But what about your own party?
right.
What about the individuals that you supported that you turned a blind eye to time after time?
Right.
Interesting double standard there.
Yeah. It really is.
You got Dalton?
Do what?
What you got?
Okay, so yeah.
So I've looked up Phil Bredesen for U.S. Senate, his website. Okay, and I just want to kind of talk to y'all about why, even if I'm not a fan and I'm not voting for Phil Bredesen, why it would be hard not to vote for Phil Bredesen. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So, by the way, the website is amazing for anybody that hasn't checked it out, but he sticks to issues that are important to Tennessee. So he's looked at he's going to talk about healthcare, the economy, and education. So not just things on the national level, but 3 things that are extremely important to Tennessee and also extremely important to him, because those are the same things he did on the state level when he was governor. So he's taking the same train, he's following the same thing. He hasn't changed his strategy one bit. So listen to just this intro. Phil Bredesen is running to represent Tennesseans in the U.S. Senate. So he said what we were talking about in the first sentence. He said, and bring Congress back to basics. Phil Bredesen is a former governor, mayor, and CEO who spent his career working on common sense solutions in the public and private sectors. All right? So he talks about the stuff that he championed here and there, and what he did for the state of Tennessee. So, where I think this gets important is you start to look at some of these issues. This next paragraph, it says, as governor of Tennessee, Phil balanced 8 consecutive budgets, opposed a state income tax, opposing taxes, but you're a Democrat. How important is that to Republicans? That right there is going to grab the attention of somebody on the right and go, oh my God, you opposed a state income tax. He kept the state government afloat during the Great Recession. That's funny. Everyone needs to look that up because that is true. He kept the state of Tennessee afloat during the recession. Okay, it says he kept the state government afloat during the Great Recession, reined in out of control spending, and championed education policies that made Tennessee the fastest improving state in the history of the nation's report card. Okay, so as we click on these issues, you can click on the economy and look at that one. And we're going to talk about some stuff on that page too. So for those of you that don't know the significance of Phil Bredesen while he was governor, I'm pretty sure y'all might not even know this. So he brought new business to Tennessee. He was influential in bringing Nissan of North America. Okay, so he brought Nissan North America's headquarters to Tennessee, Volkswagen's only North American assembly plant to Tennessee. All right, after this, Site Selection magazine designated Tennessee as a top state for economic development. Remember, he's a Democrat. During Phil's time as mayor of Nashville, he enjoyed record economic growth by recruiting high-quality jobs in companies such as hospital chain HCA Incorporated. Okay, he also led the city's efforts to recruit 2 professional sports teams, the Tennessee Titans and the Nashville Predators. So if you can sit,
You might have my vote.
So if you can sit, now here's the thing, though, this is where it gets scary, because I'm not saying that he is, oh my God, because he brought the Titans here and stuff like that like he's our guy. Ooh. What I am telling you is this guy, regardless, even if he was a Democrat, did he?
From Rhode Island and Vermont and
right.
Washington. Those are the Democrats. Those are going to be the people on the island he's sitting beside. So what kind of effect is that going to have on him and how he votes? I don't know. Maybe he's extremely principled and he truly does love the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, maybe
and if that's
true.
the case, that's good.
Well, and that would be a good thing. See, that would be the win-win scenario, that like, even if he wasn't the guy that I voted for, but he went out there and he really did take care of the economy, take care of healthcare and the education, because you would hope that the things that he did for Tennessee would hopefully show up and transpire on a national level too, to where he would take stand for those, because he could say, I watched this happen in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Like, I attacked TennCare and remodeled. Do you know what TennCare is? So TennCare is like the Tennessee. It was basically TennCare was like early Obamacare. Mm-hmm. All right, and he took that and helped reform this bullshit version of Medicaid that we had going on with TennCare. And does it work better? Yes. Is it perfect? No. But he still took the reins and did what he could do to do that. again, this is not me advocating. This is me just saying, like, this is hard to run against, okay? So when you have, and I don't have a whole lot of experience, all right? I do have some experience on campaigns and stuff like that, but when you're looking at this from like an advisor standpoint, I mean, think about it. What do you tell to Marsha Blackburn? What does Marsha Blackburn's team do when they have to do this? How do they make themselves significant? How are they going to make themselves stand out? You see what I mean? Because even if you have valid information, the only real way, all right, and I'm going to throw a real curve here, the only real way to gain traction as Marsha Blackburn is to jump on the Trump train.
I was about to
Because
say that.
there's no other way, because what is she going to do? Say, oh, I stood up for Tennessee and did that? I don't remember the last time Marsha sponsored a bill that really affected Tennessee directly, all right?
Yeah, I've
Early
heard
move, huh? Wow.
people saying that pretty much like not all, but one of the main things she's been talking about is helping prevent the state income tax from coming to Tennessee, which was like 20 or 30 years ago.
Exactly.
You know, and that's great. We definitely don't want a state income tax. That's awful. If you've ever lived in a state with that, it's not fun. I mean, already like 25% of your paycheck goes to Social Security and federal income tax. It's ridiculous. But you know, she's just not. I'm not gonna say she's not the best candidate. She might be the best one we have, but she's not a great candidate. I mean, other than the fact that she's a Republican, you know.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that because I plan on voting for her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. Like, I do too. But doesn't something about that kind of scare you? Because in the end, it's like, am I going to go cast my vote for Marsha Blackburn? And okay, so here's the thing. I respect Marsha.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've met Marsha. She's a wonderful lady. All right, she's very intelligent. All right, but I don't know what it is about being in D.C. for that long. But when you're in D.C. for what seems like an extended period of time, multiple terms, you kind of tend to change on some things. And so that bothers me, because the reason I like governors, the reason I like it when governors go and run for Senate seats, and when governors, this is why you see governors running for president, okay? Because they know what it's like to grab the reins of a state and say, you know what, I'm going to reel this in, or I'm going to let it go a little bit, because we're going to make what's best for this state. Most governors make fantastic presidents, all right? Most senators make mediocre presidents.
Well,
all right?
a president is the governor of the entire nation.
Exactly. That is my point. And that's what bothers me, is when you sponsor bills, or when you just sign off on bills and you jump on, and you might not even be at all the meetings to vote, and then now you're going to run for the Senate. You know, you go from Congress to Senate. Do you have a lot of leadership experience to be my senator, other than you being in Congress? All right. Do you have the ability to be, you know, a good senator for me? Can you represent the state? No, I want a leader. You see what I'm saying? And that is scary for Republicans to sit back and say, I mean, like I said, I told y'all before, there's a friend of mine comes into the store that I work at. His name's Ben, and he always wants to talk about politics. Okay. Do y'all remember when I told y'all about Ben?
I remember.
Okay, so Ben comes in daily, literally every single day, to get lunch, and asks me a question. And he is thoroughly concerned as a registered Republican, because he thinks Marsha Blackburn's a dingbat. Is she? No. But the fact that she's not speaking to people like Ben is what concerns Ben, because a lot of the voting population that is Republican is older in age, and Ben is almost convinced at this point he'd be better off voting for Phil Bredesen, because he really thinks Phil's going to do something for him. And this is a lifelong registered Republican. Is that situation necessarily applicable to everybody? No. But it's the fact that someone like Ben, who I talk to daily, who I'm close with, has already been affected by this propaganda.
Yeah, like
you know?
he almost fits the profile of a Republican.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, because here's the thing. He didn't vote for Phil Bredesen when he ran for governor.
Yeah.
But he's questioning on whether he should vote for him or not when he runs for Senate, because he thinks that if he votes for Marsha, that he's going to be kind of one leg up. You know what I mean? Because he thinks that when Marsha gets in there, Marsha's just going to follow suit and vote with all the other Republicans and not stand up for the things that she needs to stand up for. And that should scare most people. And Phil could do it too. So I'm not saying that this is not an attack on Marsha. This is we're trying to talk through the issues here, you know? And that is an issue that everyone should be concerned with.
I wonder what she has done in the past, like as a representative. Has she just gone along with it?
I'm curious to know that too, but I'm also
Do we
curious.
want to look up Marsha's website real quick?
Yes,
See what she
yes,
has?
I would like
Let's
to
do
keep
it. Let's
it
check
even.
it out.
Let's
Well, because the whole point in this today was to compare the candidates.
fair-
We're
yeah,
trying to
fair-
educate
fair
everybody
comparison.
on the candidates.
What are you gonna say, Jeff?
Okay, well, I'm curious to know just kind of like how things are laid out, or how it usually shakes up
You made a point where you felt like governors make great presidents, but senators don't, and that leads me
It's
to
not that
believe.
I feel like that's just kind of proof.
Well, that's proof, but that leads
was
me
Barack
to.
Obama a good president?
Depends on who you ask.
Okay,
Well,
point proven,
okay,
because
okay.
he theoretically didn't have the actual governing power or governing experience, head experience to get those kind of things
He was
done.
a junior senator and then became president.
This is what I'm saying though. That leads me to believe that in the senator or in his Senate seat, you become a bit more agreeable by nature just because of the title. You have to agree with your party and you have to make the right decision by party, by state, kind of. It's you have to become agreeable because you're kind of the middleman there, where you have to please both sides and you're kind of getting pulled both ways. It's almost like a middle management, right?
Right.
Well, when you see a governor, you see the president of the United States. When you see a leader, any leader, they are extremely disagreeable because it allows them to negotiate. Not only like for their country, for the people that they're looking after. They kind of work as like these wolves, like the leader of the wolf pack that kind of protects the rest of the pack. But also, it allows them to have these very strong negotiation skills for their foreign policy as well.
Yeah.
So it leads me to believe that these positions, these titles, actually dictate how they function as a leader, how they function as a candidate. Would you agree with that? Do you think that that's...
Yeah, I mean, I guess I agree with that. To some extent, I think that's one of those things that a lot of it is also like a go-to basis, though, because you kind of have to experience it firsthand. So, like,
Yeah.
I didn't really remember a lot and wasn't super educated on Phil Bredesen until later. You see what I'm saying? So I didn't really get to feel or see the impact of what he did as governor. So therefore, what I'm saying is based on just research.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that Bill Haslam was theoretically a decent governor, right, for us right now. I mean, he is our governor, you know, until the race with Bill Lee and Carl Dean is done with. But what I can tell you is that Haslam in himself represents to me more of the Marsha Blackburn standpoint, more of the I'm an elected official standpoint than I'm the governor. See, to me, when you say I'm running for governor, this is why people voted for Bill Lee, because they really felt like Bill Lee was going to get up there and is going to get up there and do something for them, right? I don't remember the last time Haslam did anything that I liked. All right, we increased taxes with Haslam as governor, even though he was a conservative. So if just following simple logic, right? Just following simple logic, if you're a conservative, the last thing you want to do is piss off your populace by increasing taxes, because 9 times out of 10 they voted for you because you probably swore up and down you were going to cut taxes prior.
You know what really pissed me off about Haslam raising taxes?
Oh shit! Please tell
Here
me.
we go.
Is it the gas tax, or is it the wheel tax,
the gas-
or is it the
gas
fact that
tax.
the gas
Okay,
tax
okay.
directly affects his business pilot?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, exactly. That's.
And you know how they spun it?
How?
Oh, they said it's a tax cut.
Yeah.
Okay. For
Tax
the people,
cut that taxes us.
but for the people that are listening right now that don't know anything about local politics,
Me.
yeah, how did this all start? Okay, a little background on Bill Haslam. Bill Haslam, his brother actually started, or his family started Pilot, right?
Yeah, and he was a direct operative for Pilot prior to
Exactly.
running
He was-
for governor.
he was
like the CFO or
Yeah,
something
he
like
was
that
in
at Pilot.
operations heavily. For one, he also owns the Tennessee Smokies. He's the richest at the time, and he was the richest candidate for.
Still a rich.
No. He's still
still
he's
is?
not. Until Donald Trump got elected, Bill Haslam was the
Richest
richest
elected
elected official in the country.
At $1.3 billion.
Magnum.
Okay,
Wow.
another interesting piece of information. His brother, who
Also owns the Cleveland Browns. They suck.
that's
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
that was actually what I was gonna
Not
say.
a comeback.
Baker Mayfield.
Hey, you got a win and a tie.
He deserves the starting
Hey, yeah.
position. That's all I've got to say. He deserves that. But yeah, so his brother owns the Cleveland Browns. He owns the Tennessee Smokies.
And still runs
They
Pilot.
both
Flying
still,
J.
yeah, exactly.
No.
They still-
He separated his ties with the Pilots and Flying Pilot.
Bill Haslam did.
Yeah, his brother did.
His
but-
brother
yeah.
didn't. Exactly. He's still heavily involved.
Right.
Conflict.
Yeah, of course it's a conflict of interest.
Obvious conflict.
Yeah, it's a conflict of interest, you know, and when it benefits, when this tax cut goes to directly benefit truck drivers that are shipping your gas all over the nation, and they get some sort of tax cut out of it, how is that not directly benefiting you in the profit that goes in your pocket when you're an investor for this company? Either way, we need to get back to the whole Marsha, Blackburn, Phil Bredesen thing, because we're talking about important things, but this is important. Just to kind of give everybody a rundown, do we remember what Phil Bredesen's issues were? They were healthcare, economy, and education, which are all very large issues on the national level, okay? But for Tennessee voters, those are huge issues too. We constantly lag behind in education in the state of Tennessee. We're always playing catch up with education, which is horrible. To be a state that has the economic growth that we have, we should have a better education system based on that.
What are we, bottom 18?
Gosh, I don't even know. I don't know the exact numbers, but either way, we should be better up on that. Our healthcare is garbage because we basically have adopted a junior form of Obamacare, which we knew failed. Therefore, we still decided we were going to adopt it instead of Tennessee. So that, again, is an applicable issue to Tennessee. And then the economy is always applicable in Tennessee because we've always had a very, very prosperous economy in the state. There are other things that we could prosper off of, but our economy and our agricultural output and even some of the things that we bring into Tennessee, like Nissan and like Volkswagen, these provide large outputs in our economy. This brings people here. I mean, people move to Tennessee to work at Nissan or to work at a subsidiary of Nissan. It talked about Nissan on his page coming here, right? But it didn't talk about all the subsidiaries that Nissan uses that also came here for the same reasons. So, I mean, think about all the jobs that were brought here because of that. So now, I want somebody to kind of run over the issues on Marsha's page, or do you want me to do it? Okay. And I want to discuss the significance of these two, and let's think about their perspective in the state of Tennessee also. So the first one is protect the homeland. Okay? I think it's extremely important to protect our homeland. All right? Yes. I am a firm believer in protecting our homeland. So Marsha, giving you a thumbs up on that one, but here's my thing. Is that directly significant to the state of Tennessee?
Protecting the homeland?
Not necessarily. Okay, it is it is. Okay,
but it's
an indirect.
Yeah,
it's an indirect issue to Tennessee.
Well, I understand that.
Well, no, it doesn't matter. But here's the thing.
It's more of an abstract claim.
Yeah, it is. But look at this. When you go to her homepage, okay, so let's go to her homepage, and I'm going to read what it says on her homepage. It says Tennessee values first, Tennessee values always. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But now let's talk about the actual issues. Are these issues that Tennesseans are constantly concerned with? Not necessarily, all right? Some of the things that Tennessee talks about are on here, all right? So let's go through them. Support our veterans. Do we like to support our veterans in the state of Tennessee?
Hell yeah.
Yes,
Ball
we
State,
do,
baby.
okay?
Ball
So
State.
there you go. That is an issue that we can stand with, okay? Because it is good to support our veterans, all right? Continuing to cut taxes, is that important? It's definitely important, especially with Phil Bredesen also talking about furthering tax cuts in the state of Tennessee. It's important for her to reach out and say that she's doing the same thing, all right? So this is good. Creating jobs, yes, but after creating jobs, aren't we kind of seeing some sort of kind of a play on words with Trump?
It's
I mean, this is a pattern. These are all kind of the same national issues that he talked about when he was running for president. So let's go down a little bit more. Let's see if this one has any significance to anything that's going on. Confirm strict constitutional justices to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Okay, do you see what I'm saying? This is starting to more mimic what's going on at the national level than it is at the state level, okay? And what's the last one? Combat the opioid epidemic. I'm sorry, I'm confusing my words here. That is extremely important to the state of Tennessee, okay? I would love to see that on Phil Bredesen's page. All right.
Doesn't have that?
No. It's probably in the healthcare section somewhere. Do I think it's an issue on there? Yeah, it probably is. I'm sure he's going to talk about it.
Wasn't he in close ties with I think he
Pharmaceutical?
did business with pharmaceuticals.
I'm sure he did at some point. I mean, I'm not going to claim something I don't know at this point, but combating the opioid epidemic is huge nationwide.
Yeah.
And it's huge in Tennessee. We suffer largely in Tennessee from abuse of opioids. So this is extremely important. So yes, she has some issues that really drive it back home for the voter, but yet again, at the end of the day, a lot of her issues to me and to some of the people at this table don't seem to really ring well enough for me to go to the ballot box and say, I thoroughly trust she's going to represent me, the voter, when I put her in office.
Yeah.
And that's what concerns me.
But, at the same
So
time...
let's talk about it.
Yeah. Obviously, she's supposed to be representing the state of Tennessee, but at the same time, she is up there. The Senate is the last. They are the last line of defense or opposition or being for a bill. It goes through the Congress, then it goes to the Senate. So it is a national level type of position.
Yes,
so
it is.
that she does need to be well versed in what's going on a national level, like appointing whoever, probably Kavanaugh, to the Supreme Court. You know, that's
Yeah. No,
definitely
that's
a thing because
definitely important.
the Supreme Court justice, like you addressed earlier, they're there for life. So it's really important to get a good one in there.
Right.
Very important to get a good one in there. So
So that brings significance
Yeah.
back to the race. That kind of answers that question from earlier on why this race is also significant.
absolutely.
Not just turning tides, but for the fact that if Trump maybe has the potential chance to have another, if getting reelected, another Supreme Court justice
that's a
put
big
in.
thing. Who's
okay?
about to? Somebody else
Well,
who's.
RBG.
It's RB. I mean, she's just getting old.
Yeah,
you see what
she's
I'm
gonna
saying?
have to
You know,
retire
at
at
some
some
point.
point.
Well, she
she'll die.
swears up and down she's not going to retire while Trump's in office.
Wow.
Okay, so
So she's
but
something
even
about her
if that-
party ties.
right, but even if that happens, think about it. That's still important to have people prepared for that. And
Yeah.
if we had somebody like Bredesen in office, how much would that create conflict in that scenario? What would that do to those appointments? You know.
Mhm.
And so yes, I know your point, and actually I understand it completely. The fact that like. Yes, she needs to talk to the national level to some extent because she needs to make herself relevant to them also, right? Because here's the thing, when she gets up there, she's going to do a lot for the national level. Yes, she might not do anything directly for Tennessee, but what I'm concerned about is that in order to get the attention to get those votes and to attain that seat, that's where I think you need to talk to Tennessee a little
Right,
bit more.
yeah.
Because see, New York's not voting her into office.
Exactly.
Okay? Tennessee's voting her into office.
In terms of a campaign.
Exactly.
she
So in
needs-
terms of her campaigning strategy and the way she's doing things, she very much needs to start talking to Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my
She-
advice.
She missed the market.
Exactly.
I mean, back to
It's not that the Trump stuff is bad. It is good.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
the direct
If
market.
you play the Trump card a little too hard, it starts to look like you don't bring
You're a
any
fake.
actual exactly.
You look like a fake.
It looks like you're not bringing any like genuine ideas to the table that are yours. It would be different if she was on here talking about bills that she had passed and saying what it's done while she was in Congress and what she fought to do while she was in Congress. But here's the thing, she's not. She has taken almost word for word the same Trump platform and put it on her page. That's not a bad thing, but it's a little bit repetitive, especially when every other candidate that runs, even at the state level in the state of Tennessee, is always claiming to be pro-Trump.
Well, this goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier. Trump played that card. He was a free thinker.
Yeah.
He was not your typical politician. That's where she's messing up right now.
Yeah, she's not actually speaking like Trump. She's just saying that she agrees with everything Trump
It's
said.
not, yeah,
Exactly.
it's not even necessary. Yeah, like
She doesn't have that like that person.
Yep.
Donald
Yeah,
Trump
she's-
was that New Yorker who could
Well,
talk
he
to
spoke-
the
he
person
spoke-
selling
He
newspapers.
was a great.
Exactly.
Okay, here's the thing. People can disagree with me on this all day.
I will.
And he can. He probably will, just because he's that type of person. But okay, so Donald Trump is an excellent
Yes,
communicator, regardless. Okay, so you can look at communication in two ways, right? And we actually discussed this at the end of. I'm not sure if you guys heard, but after the podcast, I discussed this with Nick and Dalton. There are two different ways that you can speak. And shout out to Tommy Mitchell for kind of educating me on this. He schooled me on this a few weeks back. But there's two main ways that you can speak. It's rhetorically or dialectically, right? Most politicians are dialectic because
No, rhetorical.
most politicians are.
Yeah, most politicians are rhetorical. They're not dialectic.
Really?
Yeah, most politicians you'd say are rhetorical, kind of like I am, because the idea is to use their rhetoric enough to persuade
Yeah.
the individual. See, being
Dialectic.
dialectic would be giving you exactly how it is because
It's marketing, right?
Exactly.
You
because
have
I'm
to
a
be able to-
believer of you too. Being rhetorical is more of a marketing scheme because it's kind of like I'm going to use my rhetoric to convince Nick to do things and that benefit me at
Yes,
the same
but-
To
time.
break
Okay,
down something
well,
logical, you have to
back
use
to the-
dialectic.
Yeah. So that either way it helps my
We should
case here.
chip in
Donald
$10 to
Trump-
both campaigns. Just saying.
Either way, Donald Trump was a rhetorical speaker.
Yes.
That's why he is such an excellent communicator. He
Yes.
broke through that bullcrap barrier of this is the exact parameters that we're going to speak within in order to keep a very civilized image to the public, right? He cut right through that bullcrap and continued speaking exactly how he does on a regular basis. Spoke directly to the individual, he made it fun, and he branded the hell out of it.
So is he
Yeah.
rhetorical or dialectic?
He's rhetorical.
Just like the rest of the politicians.
He is like the rest of the politicians, but he did something very,
Or
very.
you could argue that he used it in his own
Yeah.
you know.
But he
use
did
as
it.
a
Yeah, he
way.
did it
He's
very
a
different.
populist for sure.
Yes, but I mean, he definitely cut through the bullcrap.
Yeah, I definitely. He had a more clear, alleyway of the communication process. He didn't have that, that politician speak.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was the difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He
Yeah.
he broke the mold there. So
Between him and all of his Republican candidates, his opposition, and obviously Hillary Clinton.
exactly, and I think I can't remember where I was at. This is taking so long to get. I'm never gonna go full circle.
The
on this.
communication process.
Well, yes, I was talking about the communication process, but it was something that he had said that brought it up. I was agreeing with what was going on between Bredesen and Marsha Blackburn. Marshburn.
Blackburn.
Well, Trump's really kind of a simple speaker, really. You watch his rallies, and his rallies are pretty much just pumping him up and pumping up his base. And he doesn't give these long, lofty, very complicated speeches. They're just really simple, and I think there's something to say for that. It's not appropriate all the time, but definitely at his rallies. And I think maybe people perceive that as him not coming off as feeding them a load of bull crap every time he speaks. Just very simple, cut short to the point. I think that really resonated with the voters.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, you don't have to put a lot of words in a sentence to get a strong point across. And he spoke with a lot of brevity. He was very direct in everything he said. He wasn't using political jargon. He definitely wasn't politically correct, which a lot of people are just annoyed with political correctness. The average person just annoyed with it. Whether you don't even have to talk about politicians. It's just like, I don't want to hear that PC nonsense.
Exactly.
I'm tired of it. Can you talk to me like a person? And he was able to just talk to everybody without the
Right. So
political
even if
correctness.
you didn't like him, he would.
That's something you respect.
Exactly. You could respect that about him.
Yeah, I think that was very appealing. A lot of people, I'm willing to bet, a lot of people, walked into that booth and are like, oh, screw it. I'm just going to vote for Donald Trump. Let's change some crap up. He's not like all of the people I'm used to that I have the choice to vote for. So let's give him a shot. And, that's not exactly what Marsha Blackburn is doing.
Do y'all want to hear about some polls real quick?
Let's hear it.
Okay. So let's see when this was released. So, what is it? It's
Today's
September.
the 20th
It's
or
September.
something? September 20th?
Okay. So
21st.
this has CNN, Fox News, the Gravis poll, which is a pretty good poll, and the NBC News poll. Okay, so this is Bredesen and Blackburn. Okay, so CNN, as of the 11th through the 15th, okay, has Bredesen 50 to Blackburn 45. Bredesen up 5. That's CNN. Okay, Fox News has Bredesen 44, Blackburn 47. Blackburn up by 3. Right? NBC has Bredesen 48 to Blackburn's 46, Bredesen 2. All right? And then Gravis has 44 Bredesen and 48 Blackburn. Blackburn up 4. The national average is a tie, 46.5 to 46.5. So see, that's something that, like, in that's, to me, that's important, because right now they're even calling it a toss-up. Okay, this is going to be a toss-up. This is why it's important to continue to talk about things like the Trump rhetoric and stuff like that we're discussing, because in a race like this, yes, the Trump rhetoric could help her, but think about it in perspective of the voter. At some point, is the voter going to finally get fed up with hearing that Trump rhetoric, and are they going to want to move on from that? Is that going to potentially surge somebody like Bredesen through the polls? You see what I mean? Because at some point, we're going to get tired of hearing about it.
Or, if you're somebody who really, still to this day, when you hear Donald Trump speak, about putting America first, protecting Western civilization, putting that wall up, if what he is saying is striking a chord with you and you like how things are going, that's something you do have to take into consideration when you go into that booth. Do you think, it seems to be the case that Marsha Blackburn, whether she's an individually thinking person, she's going to come up with unique ideas or not, if you agree with Trump and she's just going to go along with Trump, you might want to just vote for her. That's an option. If you're tired of Trump's rhetoric and you don't like what he's saying, or you don't think that he's doing what he said he's going to do, or you don't like what he's done, and you do think you need to have a change up, and you think that everything that he's doing isn't directly affecting Tennesseans, because if what he's doing isn't directly affecting Tennesseans, and Marsha Blackburn is just using his situation, Donald Trump, for her campaign, then it doesn't look like it's going to affect you very much. But if you think that what he's doing is going to affect you, or it is affecting you in a positive way, then maybe you just want to keep going with it.
Exactly.
That's
I
an
agree
option.
completely.
Yeah. And then there's that fear situation, which fear oftentimes is a good thing.
Yes.
The fear of the unknown. That's what Bredesen is for me. It's like I like what I hear about him as a governor. Seems like he was, for the most part, like an independent. He really did have what was his interests were the state of Tennessee,
Yep.
Yeah.
and that's great.
But it's kind of like, here's the scary thing, you're right. His issues were the state of Tennessee when they had to be the state of Tennessee because he was the governor of Tennessee. Just like when he was the mayor of Nashville, those were his issues. But it's like, and that is the scary part, because it's like, oh my gosh,
What's
if
he
he
gonna
is the
do?
senator, what's he going to do? And now all of a sudden it doesn't necessarily always have to be Tennessee. It becomes more of a national thing. Then what?
And he's
Okay.
around in the beehive.
Exactly.
That brings us to the importance of each individual Senate seat, right? How exactly does these elected Senate seats, or these elected senators, how does that affect the United States on a grander scale? What really is their responsibility in that role?
Wait, reword that, or reset that again.
So what is the responsibility of a senator? What are the direct responsibilities of a senator, and how does that affect the state of Tennessee, and how does that affect the nation?
Go ahead, Ken, if you want it. I'm not going to interrupt anybody.
Well,
I've dominated this because this is my thing.
yeah, Dalton here's our regular Alex Jones, just likes to interrupt everybody. For those of you that don't know.
Dalton
I'm
dominates.
giving him a hard time.
It's
We all love
okay.
him.
He's like,
I'm
don't
turning
ever-
red in the face.
He
because
goes,
We
I'm
love
don't
him.
ever compare me to Alex Jones
He's,
again, is what he's thinking.
He's about to take off his shirt soon.
No,
Start
I don't
screaming.
want to woo anybody.
The Obama mask is coming out real soon, too.
Whoops.
Oh, no.
But the Senate was originally designed, they decided on a bicameral legislature as opposed to a unicameral, and all that means is two houses. And the Senate's primary responsibility, or some of its primary responsibilities, are to advise and consent on confirmations from the president. They're supposed to approve all treaties. They make declarations of war. I believe they introduce, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's them that the Senate that has to introduce spending bills. I may be wrong on that, maybe Congress,
I think it might be
or
Congress and
excuse
Senate.
me, the House.
I think it's the House and the Senate
And
approves
then Senate
it.
approval.
Yeah,
But
that's
they
it.
get the last say. That's
Yeah,
very
that's
important.
Well, you've got the reconciling committees too that go and try to match the bills up if it's approved in one or the other. But really the main purpose of the Senate was to represent the best interests of the state, and that was part of the what was it, the Connecticut or the New Hampshire compromise. I'm sure I'm getting that wrong, but it's basically this idea that you have these apportionment. The way that works with the House is that they get the House of Representatives get so many seats in the state based upon their population. Well, their population fluctuates, and somewhere like California, or let's say at that time Philadelphia or New York, were like the most populous states, and so they had the most people in the House, and it wasn't fair to the smaller states, and so they decided, well, let's give every state 2 senators, and that should even things out.
Okay, so this evens the playing field, essentially.
Yes, it helps protect the smaller states like Tennessee. We're not as populous as others.
Because just like, so California has 2 Senate votes regardless, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, even with their
And
extreme-
even with their extreme population. So yes, they might have more seats in the House, but you kind of prevent things from being just a blowover. Because here's the thing, if this was based on the voting populace alone, this nation would be blue completely.
Right.
Okay, just because of the density of those areas. You know what I'm saying? Like, because of Nashville and Memphis, 50+% of Tennessee would be blue if we did it any other way other than the system we have right now.
Those are the only
If we
blue
were-
counties. right?
Exactly.
If we were a pure democracy.
Exactly. If we were a pure democracy, that's the way it would happen. So that's to prevent those kind of things. So I mean, the Senate in itself, and that's why this is important. I mean, and when we talk about how important this race is nationwide, let's remember that this has become such a big deal to not only the voters in Tennessee, but to Donald Trump and Mike Pence themselves. Like, they both have came here to rally with Marsha Blackburn once each, okay? And they've both taken their own shots at Phil Bredesen, okay? So you don't take shots at somebody that was a former governor and is running for the Senate as the president and vice president of the United States unless you're legitimately concerned that this seat's gonna flip, quote unquote. Here's what Pence said. Let me find it. Give me 1 second.
No,
Okay, the vice president, let's see, vice president, I need to go back up. Oh, there it is. Vice President Mike Pence told the crowd of conservatives in Knoxville, Tennessee, that a win by Democrat Phil Bredesen would help the U.S. Senate become a center of Democratic resistance. Pence contended that Bredesen would align with Minority Leader Chuck Schumer as Democrats seek to upend a slim, keyword slim, Senate Republican majority. The vice president directed attendees back to Bredesen's opponent, Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, calling her one of the strongest and most principled conservatives he had ever met. All right. Pence and Donald Trump have both headlined previous Tennessee events with Blackburn as the GOP tries to boost her candidacy and undercut Bredesen's message of political independence and continued popularity as a red state Democrat who served as governor. Wow. That's just important. I mean, that's some stuff that you really got to pay attention to. I mean, there's some other stuff in here that I think that is thoroughly important to the rest of us here. Let's see. I found it earlier. Phil Bredesen, if he becomes your senator, will actually help the United States be turned into a Democratic resistance, and I know Tennessee is not going to let that happen. So see, they're trying to label, this is the media again. I mean, yes, this is a serious thing, but they're trying to label, how do you think that affects a voter when they're trying to label one specific race as if you don't vote Republican for this race, let's just consider it that Tennessee threw this whole country down the drain now. You know what I'm saying? Because they're now going to give up this majority that we have in the Senate. That's what gets a little ridiculous. I mean, if it shows the seriousness of this race, if you have the president and the vice president coming down here, it shows one, or actually shows two different things. You can look at it from either perspective. It either shows the weakness of the Republican candidate, therefore needing the help of someone who drives heavy support, Donald Trump and Mike Pence, okay? Or they're legitimately that afraid that this is going to be a closer race, like I said,
Because of Bredesen.
because of Bredesen.
Right.
So either way, that's why I think it's important for this race. This is not a joke. This is important for voters to be prepared. You know what I'm saying? This is important for people to be educated on this. That's why we wanted to talk about this. Because when you go out there and vote in November and you're voting for this person to be your next senator, it's important that you realize what they're capable of and what you think they're really going to do, and take into consideration the people that have supported each one of them. Bredesen's campaign actually, it says right here, on Friday, Bredesen's campaign aimed to draw even more focus on his bipartisan appeal by releasing a TV ad that shows voters talking about being Republicans and yet still supporting the ex-governor. And the campaign separately, released their names, those being the people that said that. Blackburn's campaign has already tried the opposite in a previous ad showing voters who say they supported Bredesen as governor, but now can't get behind him in the Senate. Okay? I mean, I'll leave that up for discussion, that kind of stuff up for discussion, because it's a little tit for tat. But I mean, I think that's valuable information. And I think whenever we end the podcast, it's important that the people know that yet again, we've gone out of our way to give people information, but not persuade them to do one or the other.
And
Yeah.
I would like to say real quick before we're going to wrap it up here in a second.
Yeah.
That I think it's really valuable to hear your perspective, Dalton, because of your experience in local politics. You know a lot of these people. You've seen how things work. So just for anyone who is listening, you know, Dalton does have some credibility in this realm, and we learn something from you every time. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Glad
that's
to
really
help.
cool. We're gonna definitely continue to update things on this race. When is the election? It's November, right?
It's in November, yeah.
It's early November. We'll probably have updates as we continue on and get closer to that. And there's a good chance that on the night of election, that we'll go live for that, no
Yeah.
matter what day of the week it is.
Definitely.
Unless I have a test at 7 in the morning the next day.
Right.
But
And-
I still might do it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
And the good thing is with the series that we're doing, we can actually go live and keep up with all the races at once. So see, we'll have congressional races in November. We'll have the governor's race in November and stuff. So we'll actually be able to key in and talk about the results for Bill Lee and
Same
Carl
day?
Dean
Is it on the same day?
and the
And we-
Senate race.
we can look at
so we
the whole
can,
the whole nation
Yeah,
as
we
well.
can actually go downtown to the square and sit there and watch the results as they tally in the election commission
Oh, yeah.
office.
Yes.
So we need
Yes.
to just go there and we'd have to be quiet. There's going to be a lot of people in there and people throw parties and all kinds of crazy stuff when they see somebody winning or win or whatnot. But maybe just to get in there and get some good pictures of the results and that kind of thing.
Can
And
we
then-
go live then?
No, I'm sure we could go live. It might be loud, but I mean, I'm sure that we
Get
can go
headphones.
live. But it's worth it, and it's going to be worth it for everybody to pay attention to this kind of stuff because this race, like we said, everybody is not just important on the state, but it's important for the national level too because this could really begin to change some things in the future.
Yeah, so kind of as closing remarks, you guys like this past like two plus hours that we just spent on this podcast, breaking down, you know, even speculating how this race is going to go, kind of showing our opinions. Just know that this is literally, we've barely scratched the surface. You're going to have to do your own research. You're going to have to put your own time into this to be a responsible citizen, a responsible voter. And that's the whole point of this podcast. We want you guys to be intellectually curious, just like we are, and engage in conversation, kind of get, you know, other people's opinions, kind of work this thing out, tug on each other's ideas when it comes to like voting. We want you guys to be involved in your own right as well. You can always reach out to us. Definitely, we're always gonna find a way to respond to you guys. If you have any questions at all, if you want to get involved, anything like that, feel free to reach out whenever. We also have our website up now, the truth or minus the truthseekerspodcast.com. You can check it out. We've got it linked in our bio on Instagram at Truth Seekers Podcast. We also want to give a huge shout out to Ken over here for coming on. Definitely respect your opinion. He's been heavily involved in kind of in the background since the idea even, you know, it was even sprouted. So we want to give a huge shout out to him. Thank you so much for being on, man. You definitely brought like a very, very interesting, very well thought out point of view and perspective.
Well, hey, I appreciate y'all having me. Anytime you want me, I'll be
Definitely,
here.
you get a regular guest status over here.
Where can people reach you? We'll probably put it on our account.
Yeah, I think
but-
it'd be actually cool to put some of our guests that are willing up on the website. Maybe have a some sort of social media handle and stuff on there too, because I think it'd be important for people that maybe got or felt touched or whatever, or enlightened by the things that you said, to be able to reach out and email you too. And ask you questions. So I think that's going to be important. And so we're going to dabble with that.
We'll definitely have a post. Glad that you guys brought that up. We're gonna have a post for Ken specifically on our Instagram page as the Truth Seeker of the Week. You know, he was definitely a huge part of this podcast. We definitely did a lot deeper dive, bringing his opinion into the realm of conversation. So really, really awesome. Really, really appreciate you. You guys look out on our Instagram page for that Truth Seekers post. We'll have all of his handles, his email address if he wants to put that in there. For you guys, reach out to him, ask him any questions, get involved with this guy over here. He's extremely intelligent. He's got a very,
Don't
very
harass
bright
him.
future.
Don't harass him 36 years from now, okay?
Yeah.
I'm watching
that.
every one of
But
you.
yeah, but yeah. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Any final words, Ken?
Follow me on Twitter.
Shameless.
See
I
y'all.
love it.
Thank you.
You're not excused.
Yeah, no, I got you.
You like
There's
that
another
Alex
crack.
Jones reference?
Yeah. That was perfect.